anger, outrage, and utter disgust is the appropriate response. I know, I get it. So why speak of these things at all? Maybe because so much of their power, and by their I mean the elitist, those with all the power, those with all the wealth. And I don't even think we should call them the elite anymore. I mean the predatory class. So much of their power comes from our silence. It comes from our natural innate response to want to look away from these horrors, these crimes against nature. Power bred from whispered words and fragmented visions of the disbelief on which they are dependent. And for so many of us, the topic that's on the tips of tongues and the tops of our FYPs is beyond triggering. For some of us, it's debilitating. And it's okay. It's actually more than okay. It's necessary that we are protecting our mental health. And so if you need to scroll away, please scroll away. Scroll away now. And know and trust that there are those of us out there that we are watching and we are talking and we are raising our voices and raising awareness as a first step to not only end this culture, but to seek justice and have accountability for all of those affected. But yeah, today we are doing a deep dive into Jeffrey Epstein. And Australia, please step forward. We are talking about EFTA 002688040 today on Gigi Says What Now. So this particular file and all of the duplicates and supporting files doesn't actually give the origins. It reads almost like a legal document, like a lawyer drafted it, but not quite. I believe, and this is just my opinion, that it was written by the claimant, who refers to herself as the intended target. Now, her name is redacted in a lot of the files, but then in, DOJ's magical fashion, it's not redacted in others, so her name is very, very easy to find. I'm not going to be using it. I will refer to her either as the survivor or she, her, but it is easy to find. Good job, DOJ. I also believe it may have come in originally over the tip line. She does refer to contacting the tip line, which in one document is redacted and in another isn't. So it is a 58-page document. I'm not obviously going to read all 58 pages. I'm just going to kind of give you the lowdown and the deep dive that I did into it and into the information that I got out of it. It starts off with a description of a childhood, an early childhood, and some of the traumas that come with it, all of which really doesn't have anything to do with the claimant's claims, with the survivor's claims, but it does kind of speak to a lot of these victims that we, in the tips, do come from hard backgrounds and hard lives, and that's one of the things that these predators looked for, somebody that could be, that was looking for something and could be loved, bombed, and given that, and with that groomed and easily manipulated. Goes on to say that while she was going through a divorce, she ended up on a kind of a dating website. Doesn't say which one, but it does say that she got matched with or hooked up somehow with somebody by the name of Adam Gurgley, Gurgly. She later claims that this would be Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell did have a number of aliases, including Maxwell Hill, that are, all confirmed through court documents. Fun little side note is that Adam Gurgley is apparently also the name of a cryptocurrency token. So she and Adam would develop a parasocial relationship via DMs and emails over an extended period of time, in which time she gained a lot of trust for Adam, and a lot of belief, until such point that she started dating somebody else by the name of Steele, who she claims was a member of a prominent local motorcycle club, and goes into a little bit about that person too. But at that point, Adam was like, that's cool, that's great, I support you in that. But they continued to be friendly. She was developing a business plan for like a baby carrier or some shit. And she goes on to claim that Maxwell, or Adam, was helping her develop that business plan, helped her create the logo. Now, the logo is very simple and classic. It's a lovely logo. There's nothing wrong with it. It's also something that's really easy for any of us to sit down and pump out in 20 minutes on Canva. Now, this was back in the early 2000s. Don't know if Canva existed then, but I'm just saying, like, it's, even with Photoshop, it wouldn't be that difficult of a logo to create. She does say that Adam created that. Adam helped her get a new computer, and through that new computer began to remote spy on her through the camera. She did have 4 children, and she claims that that was why he wanted to look through the computer, to kind of catch maybe moments of vulnerability of herself or her children. And that kind of brought up the question in my mind, why would Ghislaine do that? First of all, if Ghislaine, she had all of that going on, right? Why would she sit down every single night and catfish this woman? Why would she need to remote spy on somebody when she had everything she had at her disposal? I don't know. We do know that Ghislaine and Jeffrey would go on to be a part of the politically incorrect poll on the 4chans, and with that was clearly chronically online. That would come much, much later. So, we all start somewhere. Maybe she started with catfishing. I don't know. The claimant also says that she accuses Ghislaine and Jeffrey of stealing her intellectual property, as in the business plan. That also kind of brought up a couple questions for me, like, why would they need to steal a business plan with the amount of wealth they had at their disposal? Why wouldn't they just invest in it and get profit that way? First of all. Second of all, this business plan never came to fruition. Not by anyone, on any means. Evidently, the survivor tried to go through some Bill Gates Foundation or something like that to get funding and was denied. So Bill Gates was also implicated. But this part of the claim, and that's the bulk of the claim, is the issue of intellectual property theft, right? It did remind me, Midas Touch reported back in 2025, November of 2025, I believe. They reported a civil suit that was filed with Palm Beach's 15th Circuit against Donald Trump for $310 million. And they stated that it was identical to Jeffrey Epstein's operations. The file is also mostly about intellectual property theft. So, there is reason to believe that they were, Jeffrey Epstein and the whole circle was absolutely stealing people's intellectual property. I think mostly through art, which I was going to do a deep dive into Jeffrey and his connections with the art world, particularly with art forgery and money laundering, but that'll be in the future. So if you have any references, please comment them down below. And the claimant did provide document after document after document, a CD labeled as Young, Y-O-U-N-G, in all capitals, and some USB drives, and all kinds of stuff as proof to her claims. And the claims get progressively more disturbing. And she calls out a lot of people. Everybody from her local police department to lawyers to doctors to the head of hospitals, all the way up and up and up, all the way to the then Prime Minister of Australia. To be totally honest, I did try to do a deep dive into all the people that she named, of which there were a lot. And what I've come to realize over the past couple weeks or the last couple months is that I don't think that anybody, particularly in world leaders or the uber elite or people with a whole lot of power, are any more than 2 degrees of separation away from Jeffrey Epstein. They're not, right? It's all of them. Whether they were involved or complicit or protecting, or they just happened to know the guy. That man knew everybody and was in contact with everybody in one way or another. So I'm not really going to go into the deep dives there. There was really nothing of proof of anything that I could find. There was some scandals, some chemo, appropriations of chemo that some people died from, and hospital understaffing and stuff like that. She does at one point claim that she did go to the police about something. I guess there was something to do with her dog and the motorcycle club member. It's really gross. I literally threw up reading it. So beware. But I guess she went to the police about some of these things, and the police said, we can't investigate this because it's against a police officer. So after that, she does seek legal counsel for the intellectual property theft, in which the lawyer is basically like, look, there's no money to be made here. It's going to cost you a whole lot more than you're going to gain, and refused to take her case. She does name the lawyers and brings them in on this. Now, lawyers, if they can't make money off of a case, they're not going to take the case. So I don't know that her actually seeing this lawyer was proof of anything, but her claims after that get really, really kind of big and concerning. So she starts to claim that there were not 1 but 4 assassination attempts on her life, and that they tried to make it look like it was self-induced, and she was hospitalized. And at which point she goes on to claim that the doctors who she names and the administration, all the way up to the director of the hospitals, which she names, were misdiagnosing her and keeping her in the hospital where she didn't belong, as a part of the cover-up to her claims. And when you look at everything else that's going on, I would go into these deep dives, but you probably already heard them. If you haven't, there's a lot of deep dives out there. Because she also names Facebook as stealing her property, her intellectual property. And that made me think of, you know, how Facebook was sued for using a lot of copyrighted and publications that they obtained from the dark web illegally to train their AI model. It made me think of that. So I was wondering, well, is that it? Because she does have what she claims to be a published work, right? Published novels. The novel's called Reality. I looked it up. I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't find any records of this book ever existing. She does name the publishers. They're not a top 5 publisher. And a lot of vanity presses out there are known for scamming people. Be really, really careful when using a vanity press. And I'm not sure, she may have gone down that road. The documents that she did supply, one of them is the McAfee report, that her birthday and her banking information was found on the dark web, but it doesn't say anything about her business plan or her novel. She shows the documents where she did contact government officials and different agencies in Southern Australia, and she did contact the United States authorities. Obviously, anything that came in through the tip line on the Jeffrey Epstein case, none of that shit was investigated, right? Like, very little of it. And I couldn't find anything to show that there was any investigations into her claims in Southern Australia. Now, there is a couple Reddit threads on this particular file and this particular woman. And there's one dude who says he knows her and that she's, you know, she's just not mentally well, and she's been talking about these kinds of things her whole life, and to not give any credit to it. To which I do want to respond, we don't have any credibility from you either. You're just some randy random on Reddit. There's no proof you know her. There's no proof of anything. With that being said, does it read kind of like someone in deep psychosis? A little bit like ramblings on of someone in deep psychosis. It also reads kind of like someone that's just desperate to be heard and to be believed. And I mean, what would I do if I was in that situation that was just so astronomically wild and out there? How would I prove it? How could I prove it? There's screenshots and there's documents and there's proof of her trying to get it investigated, but there's no proof of any investigation, right? So, listen, we know this investigation with Jeffrey Epstein started 5 administrations ago. It's gone through the CIA, the FBI, and the DOJ over 5 administrations. And that's a lot of information that's been gathered. It's also a lot of opportunity to taint that well. I mean, right now we have over, 3.5 million documents with very little proof of most things. There's a lot of opportunity to taint that well, and I truly believe the well has been tainted, given the amount of just suspicious activity surrounding all of it out of the United States. And there are some outrageous claims, right? There's some really huge, deep, dark claims of cult activity and child sacrifice and cannibalism and, and you kind of don't want to believe that. Like, I kind of don't want to believe that. But then when you look and you're like, oh, snap, you look outside of the files and all of this other things, it's like, well, is it really out of the realm of possibility? So is this one of those claims? Is this some practical joke from someone on the dark web? Because we know incels like to do these weird kind of grotesque cruelty for cruelty's sake practical jokes, and we know that Ghislaine was involved and Jeffrey was involved with the rise of the incel and red pill movement, as well as Steve Bannon. Maybe. Could this be a tainted well thing? Maybe. Could this be someone that's just, absolutely desperate to get anyone to listen to their story? Yeah, maybe. We don't have proof of anything. So pertaining to South Australia in particularly, because we can only look at facts. So let's look at facts, right? We know that 55 to 56,000 people go missing annually in South Australia, 99% of which are solved, and solved quickly at that. But that leaves up to 560 people per year that go missing. And of that, 54% are under the age of 17. So there have been public allegations made to and brought to public officials and agencies. One woman, she claimed that she had claims against chief inspectors and medical professionals, and allegations and accusations against those in power for not taking her experiences seriously, saying that they didn't warrant further investigations, or told that the victim or witnesses were mentally unill or mentally ill and not well. Which, I mean, we see that, right? We see that when in this society where rape culture is so prevalent, one of the first things to do is either to blame the victim or discredit the victim. And we saw that with Karen Mulder, right? Look what they did to her. I have a deep dive. There's a lot of deep dives if you need more on that. But and that also happened to a lot of the claimants, and is happening now. We hear the chatter now with the Epstein files coming out. Oh, it's bullshit. It's a lie. It's a false tip. You know, it's automatic denial or discrediting. But you know, some of these claims go back to 1966 and even further. There's other reports going all the way back to like the 1920s. And some of these accusations, they include underground tunnels that were used for trafficking of children, alongside ritualistic baby sacrifices and allegations of cannibalism. And all of this is completely separate from Jeffrey Epstein, but they're still there. And that's the thing, is really kind of investigating and going down these rabbit holes, is that this isn't the only place that we see these ritualistic, cannibalistic child sacrifice claims. From social media to things claimed to mainstream media to conspiracy theories to celebrities saying weird random shit in interviews and stuff, and now you're like, wait, what? Does that actually make a little sense now? And when we look back on things like ritualistic sacrifice, cannibalism, these aren't new things. I mean, all the way through ancient history, we see different cultures and different religions partaking in these types of horrific crimes against nature. Even in the United States, historically speaking, fairly recently, when you look at the slave trade and the way slaves were treated, these were crimes that were committed against those people as well. So is it really outside of the realm of possibility that some of these claims that are coming out of the Epstein files are there to taint the well? I don't know. But let's get back to some more facts. So some of these claimants too, the victims were told, we can't make these allegations, or we can't investigate these allegations because you're making them against the police, so you have to go to a different agency. And the different agency's like, oh, we don't handle claims against the police. And then it ends up being this whole runaround of, well, if you have an allegation against police officers, either misconduct or wrongdoing or refusal to believe you when you outcry, where do you go? Where do you go? And we see that in the United States as well. Where do victims go to get justice when it's the powers that be that are protecting the predators? And that's something that I found in this deep dive with South Australia as well. This is not a United States problem. This is on a world stage, right? So this one claimant too, she was talking about her father being a part of this underground thing, and that there was tunnels running under her house, and her father showed her a bakery and a butcher, and said, yeah, that's where human meat is sold. You can tell by the King K on the window. That's a calling card. And a King K would be a K with a crown on top. The King K also, I mean, it can signify power, leadership, hierarchy, like in the King of Spades, the card. With a 5-pointed crown, it can show solidarity or membership with the Almighty Latin King's Nation. It could also be, it's also used very commonly in a tattoo for someone with the first name of Kevin. That would signify that he's taking rule over his or her life. So the King K can mean a lot of things. They claimed that the King K was a place where you could purchase human flesh or a connection to cannibalism. 564 pages of the Mulligan Report that came out in 2008. They had with them 792 victims, 242 that were in state's care. And they were the focus of the report. And on a lot of these reports, too, some of them did lead to the loss of these children's lives. And there are reports going all the way back to the 1930s through the 2000s with over 1,592 allegations of SA, with 924 reported childhood deaths within the state care. And that's something that we also see as an issue in the United States as well. There's a power imbalance between children and adults, and there's an even greater power imbalance when those adults have the backing of a government agency. That's a tremendous amount of power. And who's holding those that are the law or above the law accountable for when these instances of harm happen to these children who their primary job is to be protecting? There's none. There's none, and that's an issue. And when we look into the files, there are a lot of people that have accusations or close ties with Jeffrey that were adopted, or that have adopted children. And there's also a lot of agencies that dealt with rehoming at-risk youth that Jeffrey Epstein donated to. Just one example would be the Hawthorne Residential Treatment Facility that had 19 defendants in 8 cases involving dozens of victims. And that's just a single example that we have court documentation of, if you need that proof. What we see is that there's no investigation. Nobody's taking these victims' claims seriously. There's no investigation, which means it's left up to armchair online detectives to really kind of dig down and find the truth and share the truth. But when we do that, there's still no accountability. When we're seeing some public shaming, and right now we're seeing some people in power lose their positions of power, not in the United States, but around the world as a result of this latest dump of files. But it's really up to me and you to keep talking about it and keep pressuring. And the whole point of me bringing all this up, even though I haven't listed any sources, I'm sorry, I will try to do better. But you can do your own deep dives, or listen to other people's really clearly detailed deep dives. There's some amazing ones out there. The point is, believe the victims. Believe them. That's where we start. That's the beginning. And then demand justice. And if we're not going to get justice from those in power, then take away their fucking power. Shame them. Refuse to patron their companies. Don't vote for them. Definitely. There's ways that we can get justice if justice is not being served. Because it's 2026 and it's time for this shit to stop. So, anyway, I guess that's all I have to say. Sorry this video was long and probably not as informative as you wanted to. It's very feelings over facts. I'll try to make my next video much more fact and state sources and everything. But like I said, this whole thing is really affecting my mental health quite drastically. I'm going to take a break. Remember, you're valid, you're worthy, and you're loved.